Hi everyone, my name is Shelley LaFay. Welcome to my first proper official YouTube video. I've made a few videos before, but they were mostly sort of spontaneous brain dump kind of things. This is one I've actually been planning for quite a while because I want to share with you the wisdom that I've gleaned from the last year and a half, which has been an incredibly transitional period in my life. This time last year, I was completely unrecognisable from the person that you can see right now. I was having panic attacks all the time. I talked about death and suicide all of the time. I cried several times a day. I weighed probably a stone less. I hated my life and I had no idea what I was doing on this planet anymore. All of this was because I'd fallen into this terrible, unhealthy pattern of relationships with men who were, in different ways, really, really bad for me and damaging to my self-esteem, sometimes intentionally and sometimes not intentionally. I had four awful relationships in quick succession because since I was 15 years old, I've been a serial monogamist, and for some reason, I always felt the need to have a boyfriend. However painful, self-destructive and unfulfilling the relationship with them was. Last January, my most recent relationship ended when I took an overdose because the way he was treating me had driven me temporarily insane. When I came out of hospital, I fortunately had enough insight to text him and end it. However, a matter of days later, I started regretting that decision and trying to get him back. Fortunately, that didn't work. Why did you want him back, I hear you ask? Well, I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's because I was temporarily insane. So after this terrible, terrible time, I made the very wise decision to attempt being celibate for a year, just to give myself some time to mend my broken brain and heart. Even though at first it was really, really hard because it was so counterintuitive to break the habit of a lifetime. Being single has worked out so well for me that these days I can't even imagine how it felt to feel so desperate for love and validation from another person, and also to feel as broken as I was back then. The last 17 months has been an incredible time of self-development for me. I wanted to share with you some of the most important things that I've learned during this time. I'm not going to go into detail about any of those relationships because I don't think it's appropriate to talk publicly about the personal details of people who aren't here to defend themselves. So this video is mostly going to be about me and how much I've grown as a person by totally altering my self-destructive behaviour patterns. Some of these are just about myself. Others are more philosophical points about psychology, human behaviour and culture, etc. I'm sure you'll be able to relate to at least one or two. Before I go any further, I should point out that one or two of my exes are still really, really good friends of mine. I need those people to know that things that I'm going to say don't apply to them. This is about the trajectory of my personal development, or one could argue lack thereof, over the past 6 years. You guys know who you are, don't get butthurt, this ain't about you, okay? Number one, I can afford to be more picky than I have been. I don't say this to be arrogant or conceited. I say this because there was definitely a time in my life when I had absolutely no standards whatsoever. A major factor in me deciding whether to date a man or not used to be, is he giving me some attention? Even if I noticed red flags, even if I thought his social skills weren't up to much, even if I thought his behaviour was rude or challenging, the deciding factor always seemed to be, I'm alone, I don't want to be alone, so this guy will do. That would probably be fine if, after a few months, when I started getting that feeling in my stomach that something wasn't quite right with this person or with our relationship, I'd been confident or brave enough to end things. I never did. I think this is for a few reasons. Number one, I had literally no boundaries and my self-esteem was so low that it didn't even occur to me that maybe I deserved better. Number two, I clung on to the unrealistic notion that maybe if I was kind and compassionate and loving and faithful and good to this person, my love could make the relationship better. Around a year ago, I asked the therapist I was seeing why she thought I was caught in this pattern and why this stuff kept happening to me, because I realised I had to be the common denominator in all of these terrible relationships. She theorised that she thought the problem was I stayed in unhealthy relationships way longer than most people would, which obviously then gave them the scope to get worse and worse. I developed a habit of staying in bad situations until the bloody end, which would almost always end in them dumping me and me feeling demoralised and devalued and utterly, utterly drained. Within a matter of weeks, sometimes days, I would set my sights on the next person, jump headfirst into another doomed romance, and the whole hideous pattern would just begin all over again. Okay, so number 2, in this last 17 months, I've realised that I actually really enjoy / kind of prefer my own company. I can do things alone now that I just would never have done before. For example, I had tickets to see 2 of my favourite bands a few months back. One was supporting the other. This was like quite a big deal for me. These are bands that I absolutely love. A friend was originally going to come with me, and then she called me at the last minute and said she was sick. And for the first time in my life, instead of just staying home, I went all on my own. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you've been a super insecure person your whole life and you're in recovery from an anxiety disorder, that's like a massive, massive achievement. I was terrified, but I decided to look at it as an experiment. I didn't go as far as talking to people or making any new friends, but I did stand right at the front, danced my arse off, sang my heart out, and I just had the best time. And the bands, by the way, in case you're interested, are Sonic Boom 6 and The Tuts, and you should definitely go check them out because they're both just epic. I feel like I never would have had the confidence to do this before, so it represents a really huge change for me. And that kind of leads me on to number 3, which is men see themselves and women see themselves being seen. That's a quote from Ways of Seeing by John Berger, possibly, only ever seen it written down. It's a book that I had to read when I was at art school. The first time I read this line, it blew my mind because it explains so much about how I've been living my life. And the last 17 months, I've become so much more confident as a result of not seeing myself through somebody else's eyes anymore. I've realised I hugely like myself when I'm not scrutinising my own behaviour and appearance and etc. through the eyes of a male partner. Here's a really crazy example. Even up to maybe 6 months ago, I would still catch myself wondering what my ex might have thought of the outfits I was choosing to wear. It's like I was seeing myself through his eyes in my own head. I was always second guessing my behaviour and thoughts and feelings, running them through this mental checkpoint of what would he think of this. Let me tell you, I'm so glad to be over that. Number 4, over the years leading up to this period of self-imposed celibacy, I became very submissive and unassertive in relationships. This manifested itself in a few ways. One thing I found myself doing and found strange even to myself was I would allow boyfriends to explain things to me that I already knew better than they did, and sometimes when they were entirely wrong, I chose not to correct them because I was afraid of being dumped. I think this maybe comes from the fact that years ago I had a male friend who told me he broke up with his girlfriend because she was always correcting him in front of people. Spoiler alert, that's because she was smarter than him. Another manifestation of this submissiveness was me always putting their needs before mine, to the point where sometimes I altered or adapted my sleeping patterns or my diet to accommodate them or to better fit into their lifestyle. And surprise, surprise, this never happened the other way around. Number 5, I have much, much better relationships with my friends now. Instead of withholding all of my attention and affection and energy for one person, I now have a huge amount of it to share around with my friends, and we are so much closer as a result. Number 6, a big thing I've learned is to pay attention to who your energy increases or depletes around. That's your brain giving you clues about who you should keep close and who you should push away. Number 7, I have so much time now to focus on myself. In the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about how the average amount of time it takes to become an expert in something is 10,000 hours. 3 hours a day times 7 days a week for 10 years equals roughly 10,000 hours. It's kind of sad to say, but this would suggest that my expertise in life so far is in making relationships work with challenging men, because that was all of my adult life up until last year. Imagine if I'd spent that time working on being an artist or a musician or any of the other things that were important to me, instead of giving it all to these energy vampires. I feel as though making the choice to give my time to these men instead of to myself and my own personal development has held me back so much. It's not a mistake I'm going to make again, believe me. Number 8, if things are really bad at the beginning of a relationship, they're not going to get better. The first 6 months to a year of a love affair should be this incredible, magical time. You should spend it learning about each other, laughing, making love, smiling constantly. After that, once the butterflies have worn off, you should be left with this really beautiful bond to get you through the next few years. If it's all an uphill struggle from the get-go, it's only going to get worse. Fact. Number 9. It's sad to say, but at the end of the day, most people don't care about you. Not because they're bad people, although some of them are, but because most people pass in and out of one another's lives in the blink of an eye and then go back to thinking about themselves. I spent a year pathologically worrying about someone who certainly was not thinking about me. You know what I got to show for it? Hideous panic attacks. An anxiety disorder taking root in my psyche for the best part of a year. Substance abuse, which has led to major problems with my short-term memory. Destroyed friendships. Financial stress. And a lot of trust issues, which I as yet have no idea how I'm gonna recover from. In the end, it's the standards you set for how people can treat you which will determine your quality of life. Every time in those situations I could have walked away, I chose not to. I'm not a victim. The buck stops with me. When something feels so wrong in your gut that your entire body is screaming at you to leave, trust it. It's okay to put yourself first. Some people have grown comfortable in their misery and their drama and they don't want to be saved. Number 10. I used to feel really scared about ever getting close to someone again after such a load of really crappy past experiences. These days I've taken ownership of that fear and I've decided that I cannot be in a relationship again until I figure out why I keep choosing these people. What draws me to this kind of person? It's taken such a massive toll on my health and my friendships and my family, and it's set me back such a long way. I knew last year, at the end of my 4th disastrous relationship in a row, that I needed to start taking responsibility and a really good, long, hard look at myself to figure out why I was making these terrible choices. You know that Albert Einstein quote, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Well, that basically sums up the last 6 years of my life, and that's how I ended up insane, temporarily. And yes, all of those people sucked, but I was the person who could at any point have chosen to walk away, and I didn't. I chose to listen to the bad advice from people telling me to try and make these doomed relationships work. I chose to listen to my inner terror of being lonely. And above all, I chose to listen to dangerous, romantic, sentimental nonsense we've all been conditioned with over our lives about how real love is not expecting anything in return, and etc. Fuck off. I had this really arrogant idea that my love could heal anybody, based on absolutely no evidence whatsoever, by the way. And if I just kept trying, my love could transform these broken people into whole, functioning, normal members of society. Instead, I ended up physically, psychologically, and spiritually depleted. So, number 11, I don't miss being anxious about how somebody feels about me. I don't miss obsessively checking my phone. I don't miss wishing they would call or text me. I don't miss their pathetic power games. I don't miss their insecure need to come across as powerful and macho at all times. And I really don't miss the feeling that my life is incomplete without a significant other. I'm so happy being alone now that I'm not even sure if I'll ever bother with a relationship ever again. Sometimes I miss being cuddled and falling asleep being spooned by somebody who loves me. But when I think about all the crap that comes along with that, I think, nah. I'm so happy to have come full circle from a place of desperately always craving the validation of others to now really enjoying, maybe even preferring my own company and my own space. So that's it from me. I hope some of you found some of this stuff relatable or useful. Please let me know in the comments any pearls of wisdom that you've learned about yourself or life from being single. I'm going to keep making videos on a range of subjects, from mental health and self-care to general geekery and everything in between, and all with a feminist twist. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, hit the subscribe button, and I'll hopefully see you very, very soon. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will catch you on the flip side. Mwah!